FLM, wide open thinking, world-class work, and far-reaching results. Now with locations in Minneapolis, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Washington, D.C. A strategic marketing and communications company dedicated to serving clients who specialize in the business of agriculture and the life of rural communities.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined this week by Agri-Pulse founder and president Sara Wyant, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. and really around the country, because as you can see, we are on the road again for this edition of the Washington Week in Review here in New Orleans at Commodity Classic with about 9,200 of our closest friends in the commodity industry, discussing a lot of agricultural issues. And the biggest issue really on the agenda here and really in Washington as well is the issue of GMO labeling. And in the Senate Agriculture Committee, it seems like it was days ago here, but on Tuesday, they took some action on that issue. Chairman Pat Roberts advanced his chairman's mark out of committee that basically sets a timeline, because really that piece of legislation is still under negotiation, and it might look a lot different once it finally gets to the Senate floor.
Well, absolutely. We reported on the fact that the bill did come out of committee fairly easily compared to what some people had expected, with bipartisan support, including 3 Democrats. And I think that the words of the other Democrats on the committee, especially Ranking Member Debbie Stabenow from Michigan, were very important in that she pledged to continue working on this legislation, making it better so that they can get at least a 60-vote threshold in the Senate and go for final passage. So there are a lot of very optimistic things said. There's also a lot of discussion about the need from some interest to be mandatory label versus what Pat Roberts passed out of committee is a bill for voluntary labeling. And so as that dialogue continues, even today as we speak and throughout the weekend, we could see a compromise reached even as early as next week. So I think it's something that everyone here at Commodity Classic is watching very keenly, and they are working to find that sweet spot in the middle to make sure that they can get it passed.
And also worth noting on this issue, Senator Jeff Merkley has introduced kind of a competing piece of legislation that is a national mandatory GMO labeling. So that's something that's also kind of out there for the Senate's consideration at this point. I don't know if there's really going to be much for floor activity or committee activity on that piece of legislation, given that this is a Republican-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled Senate committee has already advanced a measure of some kind. But Sara, Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack was also here speaking on this issue, and he said that he's very much so in support of a national kind of a smart label system using the QR codes. Absolutely. There seems to be just a lot of things up in the air on this issue right now, and granted, the House passed a measure that went out of their chamber last summer. So in regards to this, it seems like really everyone is trying to beat that clock of that July 1st clock, that things really could get a little hairy with the Vermont labeling bill.
Well, that's when the July 1 deadline is when the Vermont law is scheduled to take into effect. And at that time, then we could see real chaos, not only in Vermont with food manufacturers trying to scurry ahead of time of how to meet the new standards, and it affects a lot of different products differently. Not every product is subject to the new law that would be in effect in Vermont. And so if it's not tackled very early this spring, the odds are not getting it done at all. And I think that urgency is finally coming through from so many people, and that's where you're seeing Republicans and Democrats getting together, looking for, especially Senator Donnelly from Indiana has advanced some language that some people seem to be getting their heads around, and how we could make sure that we're moving faster towards a more voluntary system, but with some triggers perhaps if that doesn't happen quickly enough. So I think most people here are telling us they're feeling very positive. Our Hill sources are certainly saying the same, that good things are happening.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a lot of pessimism about this conversation as a whole and the need for a greater level of education, but doesn't seem to be a lot of pessimism about the timeline. I think people think that there's really kind of a light at the end of the tunnel as far as this discussion is concerned.
It's time to get it done, and I think there's a lot of optimism that whatever Senate Ag Committee Chairman Pat Roberts does. He's going to be keeping an eye on what can also pass the House. And right now, there's not an inch of enthusiasm for mandatory passing the House. So it has to be something that can pass the House and then can go, as Secretary Vilsack said, get the President Obama's signature.
And also, just briefly, want to touch on our current surroundings right now. We did mention that we're in New Orleans for Commodity Classic. Over 9,000 growers in attendance. Just a massive trade show as well. I mean, I believe that's a record-setting in terms of square footage as well. But what really isn't record-setting is the amount of policy things up for debate by the grower groups. It's kind of a quieter year in terms of the policy sessions and the things that the groups are undertaking. Just not as much going on right now in terms of new things, new initiatives that the groups are going on. There's not a new farm bill to lobby for. But the big topic at this Commodity Classic, or one of them, has been the TransPacific Partnership, and really groups wanting to throw their support behind that as well. And Sarah, just as you look at these groups and you look at this event, how do you see the activity level and just the things that some of these groups are doing at this Commodity Classic? Because it's really a chance for a lot of them to come together and make some policy decisions, but not quite as many decisions being made this year.
Well, you're absolutely right in that this is not a farm bill year, and so there's not a lot of specific policy proposals that are going to be bubbling up through the resolution process. But we've got the growers representing National Corn Growers, American Soybean Association, National Sorghum, National Association of Wheat Growers, all in their respective sessions, talking about what else they need to do to expand their markets. And TPP is a big part of that. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is viewed as very crucial, even if it's not changing the metrics so much for access to those particular crops. It is likely to enhance feed demand, especially as we look at the 12 TPP nations and what is likely to happen with their growing middle class, their higher demands for protein. And Secretary Vilsack, I think, said it best today, Spencer, when he talked about agriculture being at the core of benefits for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and with agriculture's help lifting up how selling more agricultural products leads to selling more equipment, selling more combines, really stimulating manufacturing, that there's a ripple effect throughout the U.S. economy if we can expand trade.
So certainly a lot of things up in the air and a lot of things being discussed at this Commodity Classic, but it's been a great event, and Agri-Pulse is proud to be here covering it, and had a great session of covering some Washington issues with some folks from NFU and AFBF. So a lot of growers are very interested in things that are going on in Washington, D.C., and we're always happy to provide you with that coverage at agripulse.com. We look forward to following the GMO labeling debate as it continues to unfold. It looks like that'll be an interesting issue here in the next couple of weeks. I think that's going to about do it. For Sara Wyant, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.